So hello everyone, welcome to another Automazing video. For this episode, we have the founders of Tazio magazine, Johan, Dillen and Dirk the Jager, on the show. Hello, Johan and Dirk.
Hi, Michael.
Hi. So I guess first, let's talk about where it all started. Where did your respective passions for motoring originate?
Oh, that started really a long time ago. It was ignited by my father through Formula One, and basically, I just took his passion and took it some steps further. Just developed it further, unfortunately.
I think it's like that for many of us.
To my parents, actually. My father used to, before me and my brother were born, he did some local racing here in Belgium. And my mom was actually a marshal because she refused to sit with the other woman knitting around. So basically, I think they still have a picture of me when I was about 6, 8 months old in a buggy and already in a pit lane. So yeah, I've been around racing cars and on tracks and in between sports cars my whole life.
So that's interesting. Judging just from what you guys are saying, I'm curious to also hear what would be your personal taste in cars and whether you consider yourselves more road car people or more motorsport.
I hate that question.
Difficult.
It's like picking your favorite car. It's an unfair question.
Exactly.
Because
I would say, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Dirk.
To me, it depends of the era and the style of car, what you like. I do have a bit more preference towards racing cars because of quite often the sheer beauty, but also the story behind them.
Exactly.
Well, I have to say that I like a lot of road cars. There's a lot of passion for road cars, but nothing beats a race car. And that's purely down to sound. When you're standing next to a race car, it takes over a part of you, and you can have the most aggressive sounding road car, but it will never be close. It's just a different, it's a different level.
Agreed. So going back to the road cars, what cars do you have in your personal garages?
Me, I'm a bit of a Volvo guy. We've gone through a couple of Volvos now the past couple of years, and I have kept a Volvo 850R estate aside. But due to technicalities of the law, that still has to wait a bit before it's an old-timer. Right now, to run for just a couple of, for let's say 1,000 miles per year, these are very expensive miles. So I just parked it and it's waiting. And then I have a Ferrari Mondial as well. I'm part of the Ferrari Owners Club, but not the Ferrari Drivers Club. That needs a bit of work to get back to full running order. And it's just small things, but then it goes. Then it's back in running condition.
Would you say, of course, the Mondial over its 30 or so year period has received quite a poor reputation. How would you compare it to other Ferraris of the period?
I have to thank Dirk for this one. He was the one that pointed me towards it. I was more interested in 308 GT4, and he was the one who said, "Don't forget the Mondial. It's actually a very interesting one." And we went out for a drive-in one, and I had to say he was 100% right. It's a completely overlooked car. It's very practical and great to drive. It's a mid-engine V8, and it's actually, I know it's not much, people don't think it's a looker. I would agree on that, but as time evolves, it becomes a lot nicer to look at. It becomes a really nice car these days to look at. It's still very much undervalued, but when you're behind the wheel of that one, it's a fantastic car. It's really great stuff. And you can sit 4 people in it.
Of course, 4-seat Ferrari is always a cool thing. Yep. Would you say you guys prefer the pre-facelift Mondial or the post-facelift? Of course, they changed the engine position during that time.
Yeah, I know that is a much better car and a much more modern car, but I really like where they started with it, with the very sharp, the wedge lines. It's a statement. I like the old ones better.
Same here. Early cars.
And Dirk, what cars do you have in your personal stable?
Only my daily, which is a Mercedes-Benz E-Class wagon. I, as a daily modern car, I just love it. Just a normal diesel in it. Why? Well, we drive across Europe, but especially if you're running around in Germany or crossing Europe, it's a fantastic, comfortable car. And I still think it's a previous generation because I think it's a better looking than the current generation.
Oh, 100%. I think Mercedes design has really fallen down recently. I think it's been a case with the cars.
Mine is still has the more edges, let's put it like that. The newer version, yes, the diesel is better and more economical, but it's more rounded and it's not as good looking as the previous generation. And for what we do as crossing across Europe and as a camera car, it's an ideal car.
Yeah,
especially
that's your workhorse.
It's a proper workhorse, and especially when you're doing long distances with the air suspension in the back, it makes a big difference.
Of course.
And it's probably the best E-Class now in the world that has done the most mileage on tracks, and with fantastic race cars behind it.
I do believe though in Italy, I don't know if they had an E-Class. They might have had a C63 instead. They had that V8 touring car series about 10 years ago in Italy. I forget whether they had an E63 or whether it was a C63.
The supercar was, I think it was an E-Class. No, in Japan it was an E-Class. The Japanese one was an E-Class, body style.
Yeah.
But the supercars was a C-Class, I think, the European supercars.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, but that's more than 10 years ago now, I'm going to say.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Well, also, 2008, 2010.
Would you say that yours, you said that yours is a diesel. Would you say that, of course, in terms of diesel popularity in Europe, of course, has changed quite a bit over the past 20 years or so. Would you say it's still advantageous to have a diesel in Europe or not so much?
Yes, it does. If you're really doing mileage professionally, nothing beats a diesel, to be honest. And also, would I love to have an AMG? Of course, who doesn't? But taxation in Belgium doesn't make it very fun to get one.
Exactly. I guess now we should also move on to your journalism careers. How did each of you enter the media landscape?
For me, that's always been the goal. Ever since I was like 15, it was clear to me that I wanted to be a journalist. And I've done everything I could to get moving in that direction. It was always the ambition as well to do something in car journalism as well. But I knew that was going to be tough to force my way into that world. But I've worked hard on that, and in the end, I got there pretty quickly through racing journalism, and that evolved into cars, the product, and that has been a 25 years career in the meantime.
Yeah, for me it was debates when I was picking my major in college, or which college to go to. I had a soft spot for photography, but since when you're 18, you're not always as social skilled yet. And I was afraid that I would end up in a camera store selling cameras instead of actually working, being a photographer. So then I picked late 90s, the safe choice, IT, which I worked in a while, but yeah, and yet I found it was not my kind of job, a bit boring. So as a hobby, I started when I had my first job. You have a car and you're available. So as hobby, photography picked up again, and from the hobby, I made it my business. So that's how it evolved. So I've now been self-employed for 15, 17 years. Something like that.
Also just start generally in photography, or was it always on the motoring aspect?
Always motoring aspect. Always cars. Only cars.
And how did you two start to collaborate?
I was introduced to Dirk at the motor show.
Wasn't it a photo shoot? In Antwerp.
Yeah, it was a photo shoot first, right? You're right. Sorry, it was a
Gregory.
photo shoot. I was doing a photo shoot for an internet magazine I was running with a different photographer, and he called me up, and we meet up, and already he's taken somebody else along. Okay, fine. We meet up in the middle of winter, and it was a Lotus Evora with the Nissan 370Z. And
Right.
yeah, we come to this to the location, the photo location, and there's this one guy, obnoxious, sitting in his car, and he's yelling instructions from his window to my photographer. And I'm just like, who is this guy? And why is he ruining my show? And that was Dirk. And then we had lunch afterwards, and he goes on to talk about all these priceless classics he's been involved with, and it sounds like, yeah, right. Like you've been around these cars much. Fat chance. And afterwards I started checking out, and it was like, shit, this guy is for real. And the next time we ran into each other was at a motor show indeed. Yeah, then we had a talk, and I said, look, maybe we should try working together, because I think it's quite incredible. Dirk was around with many international media, but not in Belgium. And I just couldn't believe it, that a guy, his talent was not in demand in Belgium. And that's basically where we took off now, what, 10 years ago? A little bit more probably already?
Yeah, probably. Something like at least probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
14. Well, yeah, at least 10 years ago.
At least 10 years. And we have this terrific way of cooperating, where I do the writing, he does the photography, and it works marvelous. It does
Agreed.
wonders.
Also, we'll get on to your main project at the moment, Tazio magazine. However, I would first like to ask, what are you both involved in outside of Tazio? Dirk, I know that you are a senior advisor to Automobilwoche in St. Moritz. So
Correct.
what are you both?
Sorry?
What are you both involved in outside of Tazio?
One of my clients organizes the Automobilwoche in St. Moritz. And I'm one of the liaisons between some of the owners who join us, and I try to find some more owners to come and join us. We have about 5 driving events there. I serve a couple of clients as well who do some send cars to Concours, and I do some the research and preparation for them. And depending on the client and depending on the show, if they have the time or want to go, I go in their place to present the cars, basically, because sometimes the client don't want to do the presentation or doesn't always want to be seen. Let's put it like that. And basically, that's how you get to meet a lot of other collectors. If you're showing at a concours with a expensive rare car, and you get to drive it in front of the podium, it builds up a trust with other people if you want to talk to them. And that's where you can get your hand on a couple of other fun race cars from time to time.
So also, perhaps a few words also on your lives outside of cars.
That's a good one. What life outside of cars?
So all these memes are about, what was it? About how this is not a hobby. A hobby is something you spend your spare time on. This is already, what was the wording that they always use on those memes? This is life. This is, yeah, one's life.
Yeah, this is life, of course. Cars are life for us, basically. Well, if you have some spare time, basically, yeah, the dog. Let's put it like that. Going for a good long walks with the dog, and then look at some more cars with the dog. She goes along if it's in Belgium or so. She goes along to shows just for the fun of it. Johan?
No, I try to spend as much time on the bicycle as I can.
Yeah, same here. I unfortunately haven't been able to ride that often recently, but I do often go out for bike rides with my dad. Yeah, that's something I also really enjoy. What would you also say would be the challenges, just to move on to a different note now. Challenges of organizing features, especially with racing cars.
Oh, a lot. When you're creating a photo shoot with a normal street car, you can basically do it anywhere where the car is located. It defines does the owner want to go far or not. You want to do something specific depending on the history or the looks with the backgrounds, but you can do it wherever you want to, whenever you want to.
Exactly.
You can choose to go in the evening and soft light, early morning. Oh, it's rain. Let's wait for a couple of hours or come back during the night or tomorrow. Doesn't matter. Racing cars, not so much. This is quite often months planning in ahead, making sure, because the location usually is a track most of the time nowadays. We have to keep in account to noise restrictions. Then it's transport, dedicated transport. Depending on the age of the car, we need racing engineers and mechanics.
Is that something you guys organize, or is that something that the owner or the dealer say would do?
A lot of organized. If it's an owner, usually they're well prepped. They have their own team usually ready, so that helps. But if you're dealing with a car from an auction or a dealer, it's not always prepped. Then you need to assist them a little bit as well. But it's talking to them quite a lot to get to make sure that the location is available, the mechanic is available, the transport is available, and the owner is available. It all needs to work out with several people.
And then the car that ran faultlessly yesterday does not start today, and there you go.
Yep. Especially if then hear, oh, the engine just came from the test bench. It works faultlessly, and we warmed up the car faultlessly. Now it doesn't start anymore.
That doesn't. Yeah, those sort of things do happen. Would you say that? Have you had any particular horrid experiences in such cases?
No, not really, but it does get
Horrible.
frustrating because there's so much time involved. One of the more frustrating ones was one of the DTM alphas that was running up to a point and then started developing a software problem just before we could get our hands on it. And then you go home empty-handed. So that's basically a very frustrating day. But I must say, in general, it does not happen all that often. It's rather rare that things go completely sideways, but we did have to be creative on occasions to make it work. And there's days we've had it with Roof, for example, that in a couple of hours weather will be fine.
Right.
You wait a couple of hours, no, weather is not fine. But it will improve, and then darkness starts setting in, and that was one where we had to say, okay, we'll stay on for another day and we'll do it tomorrow. These things happen. Sometimes it's you can be lucky for only so much, and at times you just have to cut your loss or try to save what is there to be saved.
Exactly.
Yeah, sometimes people say, "Oh, you must be fantastic being able to do such a photo shoot with such a car." Yes, but sometimes you don't want to know what we have to do to get to that shoot or to a certain result. It looks better in the picture often than the day itself.
Yeah, it's I would say it's not so much what goes wrong on the day itself, but often you need to some stories have taken years.
Yeah,
just preparing, get going, and then, oh no, the car is not ready, or I just sold the car, and then you need to restart negotiating with the next owner. And that's the very frustrating part. And it's all about not letting go of the story, not saying, okay, forget about it. You never forget about it. You always try to keep going. And sometimes in a very unexpected way, then all of a sudden your story reappears.
Yeah, like the E30, the spa winner from '92 spa winner, took us 4 years to do. 4 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember reading about that. I think it was in the editor's letter, that issue. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It happens. It's part of it. Yeah, so what? Okay. And well,
I would say, yeah, many people would simply walk away from it. And I think it's one of the things we do differently. We just stubbornly don't let go.
Mm-hmm. And I know you guys just mentioned that 1992 Spa 24 Hours feature with the E30 M3s. From what I remember, that was mostly a static feature. Did you guys get to drive the cars at all?
Not that one.
Not that one. The owner had it was a fourth owner in 4 years. Luckily now it was a friend of us. That's how we managed to save the shoot after 4 years again. And also, Brexit had been in between and Corona had in between. So that was also some problems. But that was literally the day he took delivery of the car. And the car had been sitting for the past 2-3 years, not really raced. So it first needed to go full check over before he was actually willing to drive it himself. Because the car was basically delivered there without, it had a quick check over, but not a full prep. And he said, we're not going to race it for safety till I know for sure that our mechanic has gone over it to make sure everything is all right.
Makes sense.
But it also involved a lot of transportation to get that car to Spa. Because it went from, back then, from Norway to Holland in between, then to the owner other side of Europe, then back from the other side of Europe to Belgium for the shoot, and then back to the other side of Europe.
But that is indeed, Michael, that is typically a story that left us a little bit frustrated because we're only happy when a car runs in front of the camera. If we would have had Steve sober behind the wheel driving that car, then that story would have been perfect. And now it wasn't. We had to compromise a bit on that. Still a great story, but this is for us a typical example of a story where we were only 90% happy.
But after 4 years, we were quite happy with the 90%.
Yeah.
90 is always better than 0, of course.
Exactly. It was that or it was nothing. That's,
On a slightly separate note, just something I just thought of. You were saying that you guys, while you did not drive that particular 92 Spa winning E30 M3 Group A car, have you driven other E30 M3 touring cars or Pro Drive rally cars? And if you have, how would you compare that to the standard homologation special road car?
I've been lucky enough to race one in Belgium for in the early 2000s. But that was a modified road car. And you cannot compare these cars to what came out of motorsport. These were fully prepped race cars that have no resemblance to the road car. But a lot of the M3s you would find in racing now and in club racing now are modified road cars, which do, I think, the same 7,200 RPM and would not be much different from what you have in the road car. But the very interesting thing is what always strikes you in the road M3 and the E30 M3 is it goes up to 7,200 RPM. And in those last 200 RPM, it starts making the sound of the race car that would go all the way up to 9,000. And in these last 200 RPMs, you can feel just that. And that's all you get in a road car.
There's a little glimpse of what's there.
Yeah.
I guess it also makes sense a little bit why, I guess it is a little bit controversial, but why many have swapped out the S14 for, say, an S52 or S54 in those engines, kind of get a little bit more of that motorsport raw edge.
I find that, of course, you can do that, but I would always be as respectful as you can be towards the vision the manufacturer had with the car.
Exactly.
You can do whatever you want with it, but it's not the same car anymore. And the M3 was the envelope. I think many of these homologation specials, apart from the Sierra, if you drive them these days, it's only a 200 horsepower car, and you only have these 200 horsepower in the last 500-700 RPM, which makes these cars, if I'm honest, a bit disappointing to drive in daily life. It's the same with the Group B homologations. These are not fantastic cars to drive.
Rather crude.
Yeah, and you have this idea that it's going to be driver's heaven, but it isn't. There are much better cars. On that said, the balance in the E30 M3 is just extraordinary. It's when you start pushing that car and start throwing it around, then it comes into a league that is that sets it apart from other cars. But basically, horsepower wise, if you, for me, this is never $130,000 cars. I would be very disappointed to drive it if I've just paid $130,000 for that. And that was not back in the days. This was maybe 15 years ago. $30,000 was already a big ask for an E30 M3.
Yes. I guess that's also where kind of the rest of modern companies are perhaps special builders for, say, you try to take your S14 B23 or B25 and then build it up to the level of those original motorsport or pro-drive cars.
Yeah.
And yeah, something like a Redux Lifebow E30 M3 Evolved would also, I guess, fix a bit of that for the price.
It's all about the carbon airbox. You just put in the carbon airbox and then you have more of the sound. And to hell with the horsepower, it's not important. It's about how that sounds.
Agreed. So since we have been focusing on historic motorsport a bit, what would you say modern motor racing could learn and perhaps improve on from historic motorsport that we see now?
I would say nothing. To me, historic motorsport is, well, basically, if you look at historic motorsport these days, a lot of the cars running are replicas, understandably so. And modern motorsport, if you look at GT3 Formula One, is a much more aggressive style of driving. There is just no overlap. Modern motorsport is about going forward without compromises. And in historic motorsport, it's all about the compromise. Yeah, that's.
But would you say some of that compromise, perhaps, say with historic motorsport back in the day, where many touring cars, rally cars, sports cars, they would all be very, very similar to road cars? Would you say an approach like that nowadays would be something that would make it a bit more exciting? Say you have, G82 M4 competing against 911 C4S in rallying, for example.
You could see it that way, but on the other hand, the 911 Cup is just a car that comes from the line in Porsche. It's really, and a lot of the GT3 cars have been built up from production cars. I think a lot of the modern day cars have never been closer to production cars.
Especially if you look at the GT4 class, for instance, that is basically a street car that's prepped for racing.
I guess
it's not that much different.
Yeah, GT4 is closer. I don't know. To me, it's just more of a personal thing. I remember going to the Watkins Glen 6 Hours, I think a year or two ago already. I remember I did have a video on that. There was an interview I did with Bozi Tatarevic, who is one of the mechanics for the Lexus racing team, also one of the contributors to Road Track. And he was talking to me about the Lexus RCF GT3. And I remember they were about to take it to the scrutineering, and we were talking about the center lock wheels. And I say, okay, so let's just take, I believe my question was something along the lines of, you take the front suspension, bodywork, all that. How similar would you say that is to the road car? And so we're saying, well, first of all, we have to change the suspension uprights. Then, of course, we have to do a different lock pattern, redesign the suspension geometry, all that. I guess I kind of thought, okay, yes, it is quite similar in terms of, the original design is modified and everything to the original RCF. Yet, somehow, isn't it a little bit out of the spirit of the sport, really, to kind of have regulations that allow such drastic changes?
It's all about product improvement in the end, isn't it? And they want to take it. If you put out a rule book, the first thing they do is turn it upside down and look for ways to improve beyond the rule book. That's always been the case, and I would not be too fixated on road cars are per definition not good race cars. You can see that very well in Group A touring cars, which are in fact, they have given us a lot of exciting racing, but these cars are very heavy and not very good. especially the early ones. If you look at the early 5 series in Group A,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, these are the Rover is fantastic car, but that really is an improved road car. And these are not. I don't know anyone from the racers who will say, "Oh, I love driving these Group A so much." Not one of them. So
Interesting.
I think it's a bit of a link that is perhaps too romanticized.
Mhm. I think perhaps it's made to be more flexible, perhaps.
I would say for me personally, the cars that I love the most from a driver's point of view are the Italian Barchettas. And
Agreed.
basically, that is the other way around. These were cars that were developed to go racing, and you could drive them on the public road. And that is really something that I like a lot more. Again, smaller engine a lot of the times, but low weight. And it's all about a good driving experience is about low weight. That's
Agreed.
yeah.
The fine outlineness to go Chapman. I guess what you were saying though about the Barchettas and of course road races. So I guess a lot of that's really what makes events such as Target Tasmania so special now. To have those events on the road, of course, there have been some incidents recently, but they are working to fix those. Yeah, that's really what probably Tasmania, the Great Barrier Reef, all those events, probably some of my favorite motorsport events now. Yeah.
At that point, it becomes culture.
Mhm.
It's a lot about these people getting together and doing stuff to cars and preparing just for this one event. And that's really that it becomes a cultural event at that point. So that's really, racing on a public road will always be dangerous, no matter where and how you do it. There's trees waiting for you. If it goes wrong, it can go horribly wrong. That's just a sad fact of life. But I really hope, for instance, we have in motorcycling the Isle of Man TT. Everybody who goes there is aware that he might not be coming back the same way he went over to the island. I'm always open for the debate, but if people want to do it this way, why should you stop them?
Exactly.
And it's tremendously exciting, all of it.
Mhm. Agreed. Yeah, definitely those Isle of Man events, fantastic roads they have over there, especially with the Isle of Man International Rally. Those videos of Patrick Snyers in the E30 M3 Pro Drive, they're just some of my favorite pieces of motoring media.
Yeah, we should do a story on that, shouldn't we?
Yes, 100%. I'll be in contact about that. Pro Drive do have that original Bustos liveried E30 M3. Yeah. Something to look into. Mhm. Also, I guess now we should get on to Tazio.
Hopefully.
How did the idea to start a print-only publication on historic motorsport materialize in this digital age of the 2020s?
I would say, Dirk, that that's probably because we are not very digital guys, are we?
Nope.
If you look at all the paper behind his back.
Yeah.
That's just a little bit of it, what's standing here. I like the feel of a great book and a great magazine, and I like quality. As most people, even the younger generation, they don't really read much online. They all scroll online and look at pictures, but finding good, correct writing, not that easy. And if you find a long text, it's maybe 800 words, and that's about it, because people don't spend time reading it actually. I love reading actual good stories, long stories, and full books, doesn't matter. But I also want quality in my hands. I want a product that you can keep and collect and look at. A nice bookshelf is a great piece of art in your living room. But if you see a lot of magazines nowadays, well, especially the monthlies, they tend to go cheaper and cheaper on paper and printing. You don't even want to keep that anymore.
I would say actually with those monthlies and weeklies and so on, while they used to be sort of, I guess, the apex of motor enthusiasm in terms of media, I really think that in more recent, just perhaps the past decade or so, they've really cheaped out not only in terms of paper, but also in terms of just the general quality of the features. because
Of course.
so often you see the exact same titles. So the exact same features and ideas for features is just very repetitive. It just gets a little bit tiring.
They are fighting the internet. Always going to be first. Then they often use for free because it's cheap the pictures from the manufacturers, from the auction house, from the dealers. Because it's quick, you don't have to go anywhere. It's available. It doesn't cost you anything. But that way you see the same stories over and over online and in print. Because with a weekly or a monthly, you have to have content. You have no choice. It needs to be full. It needs to be ready. It needs to go out the door. And you see the lack of quality going down there, and that bothers me. And with a quarterly, you can at least have the time to create some quality and look for something different. And also you give the readers the time to read something. Because if you're talking to collectors from every country that I know, they all say the same thing. Yeah, we have a stack of this many magazines sitting. I don't have the time for it for a monthly. Because their intake comes from social, basically, or from websites.
The big advantage we have is that most of the ideas for the stories we do come from talking to people. And a lot of the time it's someone telling us, hey, you need to talk to that guy over there who has this car. And you get in touch with him and he's, oh, you're interested in that, in my car and this. But do you know I have a friend who has that car with that story? And that's how the ball goes rolling. And there is no component there where you can link it back to something you saw on Instagram or anything. It's just all our own ideas. Yeah.
It's all about experience, I guess, both in terms of creating the feature and in terms of reading. That's really what makes more print, traditional media more special in these titles. I guess also something that we've been seeing.
We are very sensitive to the quality of the story. We really want everything to be a good story. It's for us, chassis numbers and race results do not necessarily create a story. There has to be something that happened. Otherwise, it's just boring. We are not a list of chassis numbers.
Agree. I guess also in terms of the print, there's something that we have been seeing over the past, I'd say, 5 or 6 years, where people have really wanted to see more high quality, more so quarterly as well, of these publications. They're focused truly on the wonderful stories of over a century of motoring that we have had so far. Certainly in terms of Tazio and many other titles as well.
Yep. For us, the clincher there was that we wanted it to be a product you would want to keep, and then the best possible product for your money. We ask a bit more money than other competitors, but the quality of the magazine is just beyond what others offer. I think the only competitor there quality-wise would be the Road Rat.
Yep, and they're the same price.
Yeah, and everything else is just really not on the same quality level as we are. And that's just basically down to the investment you want to do in paper and printing.
Yeah, but even if you see nowadays, a lot of the older titles and the well-known titles from the UK, for instance, if you see what you pay for them in the corner shop here in Belgium, they're not that much different in price anymore. And they're done monthly. So if you buy 3 of them, you're spending more than double to nearly triple. Well, you're spending double what we pay on one issue from us. So yeah, nowadays, what's €10 for a magazine or $10? And it's cheap paper.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's what you get in return.
It's what you get in return. It gets cheap paper, bad printing, and you see it. If you have a little, you don't even have to be well known about the products, but you see it in your hands that it's not great quality, and you feel it.
Yes, agree. Yeah, especially with also these more legacy titles we have seen over the past decades. That has been the case very much so.
Yeah, and I'm convinced that the quarterly publishing rhythm for these kind of stories is the right one. Nobody is asking anymore, is waiting for another big monthly that just becomes a pile of unread magazines. That is, people don't have time anymore, and this is a good rhythm. 4 per year is just right.
Agreed. Definitely the Goldilocks number. I guess also it's quite a positive contrast to what we see nowadays in digital media, on Instagram and all that, where it's just constant information, constant media, constant content that simply numbs the mind.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's an overflow.
Too much to process, yes.
Too much to process. And try finding quality there nowadays. Not easy.
Agreed.
You want to say, Johan?
Sorry?
Johan, what did you want to say?
Yeah, I was just thinking that it's exactly right what you say, Michael, and this is very important for us as well. It's also why we put the slow stories subtitle on there. For us, Tazio is a magazine that you can put away in the middle of a story and come back to it. And this is really something we wanted to create. It's not born exactly as an anti-digital thing, but really we have tried to build this for people who are a bit fed up with the smartphone.
I have a copy right here of the latest Tazio issue 8 on Le Mans. Slow stories on fast cars, just so everyone can see.
Yeah.
So also,
what did you think of it?
Of Tazio 8? Oh, it's been absolutely fantastic. A lot of the stories I really wanted to read over the past few years, especially the one on the ProDrive 550, has been an immense story, I think. Also that story on the psychedelic 917. Again, another story that hasn't been published much over the past 50 years already. It's been out. Hasn't been much on that. No, it's been a fantastic issue, I think. Also, another untold story is on John Wyer's Mirages.
Yeah.
We all know 40s and 917s, but also what did Wyer do after that? So yes, really a fantastic bundle of stories on Le Mans. And again, it's not. I have a number of Le Mans specials that I've been using for research that I simply read for my own enjoyment, and I see a lot of the same thing where it is a considerable amount of the page space is taken up by, okay, these are the number of Le Mans winners. This is the distance one, everything. It's just, it takes up half the magazine. It's just you keep getting the same amount of information, the same way you could get on any historic motor racing database or on any other number of digital titles as well. And also get a lot of the same reshuffled stories.
We thought there was little point for the 100 years of Le Mans to retell stories that you know already. And that is what we've been trying to avoid. And this is the thing that I think we are doing really well. Many of these stories are known, but not very well known. And what we are trying to do differently is we don't copy from the internet. We will call up everyone involved if we can. We will go after them and try to hear from them and check things, because that's very important as well, that you find that there's a lot of stuff on the internet where the driver involved will say, I know about that, but that's simply not true. And there's no checking done anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's also because of the internet writing nowadays. They also want to be first. They get 2 hours to write something for 800 words. So how can you check something if you get 2 hours to write an article? If we look at Le Mans issue, for instance, out of our 8 lead stories, we spoke with 6 of the people involved. And 2 of the articles, we actually took the drivers with the car to the track. Nowadays, that's getting almost unheard of. Who still wants to do that? But that makes it cool.
Also with that R390 GT1 piece on the road as well.
That was a cool story. Yeah.
It was not a public road. It was actually a test track.
Oh yes. Also, another thing was about you were saying that you contacted 6 people for the 8 stories.
Yes.
But also, a lot of these people, of course, live private lives and perhaps not on social media, etc. Would you say it's particularly difficult to get in contact with these people? How much of the 3-4 months time for production does that actually take?
It can take a while sometimes, and sometimes it's the next day.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to move a story because, well, the guys are not ready yet to talk. It happens also. But it's worth making that time to talk to those guys because, well, that's why we want to read about that story, because they lived it. They created that story, literally.
Of course. What has been also the general process as well as the hurdles in starting up Tazio?
Money. money.
And a publisher as well.
And distribution is a headache. To get the magazine out. The Le Mans issue is now the first one that we've offered on newsstands in the US and in the UK. We already see that makes a big difference. But to be frank, it has cost us this much time to get it organized.
Yep.
And this is just this is a very frustrating part of the business with a lot of hurdles to clear. And yeah, this is the way we do it. It costs a lot of money. We are involved that we are convinced that this is the way. Either you do it this way or you shouldn't do it. We don't save on quality, but the downside to that is that it's a very this thing eats money.
Yeah, that's also a difference in quality we make. We can make it cheaper in printing, in paper, but you're gonna notice it. Same thing. We still make the effort to talk to people, to go to the cars, put the cars on track. That costs time, energy, and money. It's that simple. But we're getting one of the few people that are still actually doing that. If you look at the other magazines, they're getting less and less about doing that. One of the reasons why we started Tazio, because we've been working freelance for other magazines in the past, and they were saying, "Oh, are you here again with a racing car story? Can't you do something more easier, faster, and quicker, and recognizable?" Because if you take a street car, we come back to what we said earlier, you can do it. Well, hey, you have time in an hour? Let's go do it, and just write about how you're driving it.
Would you say that is the case with some of, I guess, Tazio's peers in some senses, with other quarterly, more high quality titles, the more rushed sense?
I wouldn't say rushed.
Sorry?
I don't really want to say rushed, but you do see that other magazines do make it sometimes easier. Let's put it like that.
But basically, how the others go about their business is their
it's their decision.
Work. Yeah, it's their decision. We just do it our way because we like to do it this way. It's how we want to produce it. Perhaps maybe the biggest mistake we have made from a business point of view is that we made a magazine that we wanted to have. We basically made the magazine for us, and that is always one of the rules that you hear in product. Don't make something for yourself. But so far, the response has been overwhelming on people saying, look, you've created something that we didn't know existed anymore, a real magazine.
Exactly. I think people often underestimate the market out there. I guess a good analogy would be with Andreas Bräuninger and his GT department. How with the 991.1 GT3, there was kind of thought with the PDK and slightly more daily driver focus, that there isn't the market for the analog drivers car anymore. Yes, when the 911R came out, it was out of mayhem to get one. Yeah.
No, it's exactly that. We are the manual option, indeed. That's true.
Yeah.
And this puts you in a certain corner, and then you start seeing things differently. And then you see in the whole digital revolution that it's mainly pushed by people who have money invested in it, and it's in their interest that that product does well. But what we have found, and I think is really of essence here is that this is a transaction, and in digital publishing, the difficult thing is to make money of it, because in essence you give the reader nothing in his hands. And that's what we try to do differently. We give you something, and we give you a beautiful product, and you will want to keep it.
Mhm.
And so you have a better sense of value. And I think there's a lot of people starting to see this now. And this is why there is still a lot of future in print products, but you do have to realize that you're not working for markets of 100,000 copies anymore. Those days are over. This is a very, very niche business, but we are very much convinced that we know who we target, we know who our readers are, and that's important. Which is something you don't have on Instagram. You think you know who these people are, but that's just simply not true.
Mhm. Half of them are bots anyway. So
Exactly.
yeah.
More nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Would you say also we can see also more of that Tazio attitude expanding to other products, perhaps also books or something along those lines?
That's a very good question. Indeed, that is something we're working very hard on, and which are in development. We're not going to say much on that, but exactly these things are coming.
Fantastic.
Thank
Well,
you.
I guess we'll also speak about the latest Tazio issue that's coming out on September 7th or 8th, I believe.
Porsche issue. Yep.
That is, of course, done in collaboration with Porsche.
Yep.
And is celebrating 6 years of the 911, the world's
Yep.
favorite sport.
Well,
and of course, it's competition history.
Again, the thinking there was this is the year where most people celebrate the 75 years of Porsche. And since everybody's doing that, we said, okay, let's do it differently and zoom in on the 911 because it's a 60 years anniversary of the 911. And what we do is we've built an issue around this explains why the 911 is such a legend.
Mm-hmm. What would you say has been for each of you your favorite feature to work on, and perhaps also favorite behind the scenes moments as well?
For me, the favorite one is the Spa 1992 issue. That is my signature feature. I would say I was there at that race. I have lived it, and I have recreated it now with all the players involved. And really, that has given me a tremendous amount of satisfaction.
I would say my personal preference is 30s and 50s, but so far all the GT1 stories we've done with all the GT1 cars, because those were my early years that I was myself shooting track sites. So that was when I started out shooting track, 20 years ago. But I saw all those cars live when I was doing track photography back then. So I was standing there, I was touching them back in the day. And they are just beautiful cars, one of the top racing series the past 20 years in my mind. And now being able to have them alone on track, like the 550 or the Corvette or the Viper, or the Nissan, that just like blows my mind.
Yeah.
And the 250F, that was a magical moment as well.
Oh, the 250F, yes. One of the top 5 most beautiful Grand Prix cars ever.
Yeah.
Agreed, 100%, 100%. I'm not really sure anything from this turbo hybrid or even cited before that can really compete in that top 5 list. Definitely not.
Oh, Cabo Lago T26 Grand Sport, the Grand Prix car.
Yeah.
That's also one of my most beautiful Grand Prix cars. And actually, it was yesterday, 2 days ago, with one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's one sleeping around 10 kilometers away from me. There's one sleeping here. So,
gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. For this.
Thank you, Michael.
No, thank you.
Hopefully, we can have you again on the show in the future. Keep up the
to celebrate the 10 years of Tazio or something.
Of course, of course.
By that time, you will be editor-in-chief, of course.
No, I'm perfectly fine. Thank you very much.
All right. No, good.
Yeah, again, thank you very much. Thank you also for Tazio. Keep up the great work, guys. Really. Look forward to reading the 9/11 issue. And of course, future, looking forward to contribute myself, of course.
Well, looking forward to many more stories of you, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, guys. Thank you
All right.
also all for watching. Thank you all for subscribing. Goodbye.